Welcome, welcome, welcome. And we want to talk about relationships with you in today's transmission. And the relationship that you have with yourself and others, the romantic relationships, the friendships, the partnerships, what they are, what they mean, and how you can form healthier relationships in your life. Now, the aspect of the relationship is when more than one of you souls, the human beings, come together. And as more than one of you come together, you create a space for maximizing an energy field. And often or not, this maximizing of an energy field will be a co-creation of what you have gathered in your experience and what another has gathered in their experience. And then you begin creating this reality between you both or more than both of you. And when these relationships form, it's always important to return back to the self. Because the relationships that you form is always a reflection of where you are and what aspect of you have been directing the energy of love to. And it can be hard for so many people to understand this concept, because when relationships aren't going the way in which your heart desires or the way the mind has conspired the relationship to be, then we move into places of blame, of the lower frequency emotions, and we start stirring. And when this stirring begins, it creates the fields of anger, disruption in the form of arguments, discontentment, but it's basically a disruption in your vibrational field. And what this brings up normally, as we mentioned, is parts of you that you have yet to see, that have yet been uncovered and yet to bring into a place of love, presence and purity. So relationships are so important on your journey in terms of the way you can grow and expand, because they really tell so much of where one is. And now if you are having difficulty in your relationships, whether they are friendships, romantic relationships, partnerships, or any form of relationship with yourself and another, then you must return to the self. Remember to always return to yourself rather than looking and overthinking another. Yes, this can be challenging to do, but it is so important to return to self. Now let's take your romantic relationships, for example. And when the romantic relationship isn't in a place of joy, happiness, love, support, encouragement, growth, and it is traveling more along the lines of blame, anger, the causing of arguments. When you are traveling along this landscape, and when you go to bed at night and you're no longer in what you call the honeymoon period, you're kind of sleeping at opposite ends of the beds. When you are in this place, lack of love, and when we say lack of love, the frequency of love has left your reality. And maybe it was never there in the first place. Maybe you entered into this romantic relationships for other reasons than the purity of your heart. And this is where we have to be really honest with ourselves. Go back to the very beginnings of why you entered this romantic relationship with another. Was it just for the pure physical attraction? Was it purely for something the other had that you were missing or you were lacking, so they could fill that void? We want to start there, because if you can begin at the roots, you can then travel along this timeline of your romantic relationships and see where you are falling short, where the disruption is. Now, as you travel back to the very beginning and understand the reason why you entered into this relationship, now there's no need to judge why, but you just want to understand why. Because once you understand the why, you can be really honest with yourself. The line of truth, which is what we always talk about. We can remove ourselves from the identification of who you think or believe you should be and behave and act and whatever else you identify with. If you can step back and observe the person that entered into this relationship, step back and see what he or she was looking for, and find what he or she was trying to fill. That's what most of you are doing. You are looking for someone to fill a void. And the closest match to the energy center that you lack the most energy, where you lack nourishment, where you lack life, you draw upon that person who has the life that which you lack. And here is the exchange. More than likely, they too have done exactly the same thing. And now as you enter into the exchange, which you call a relationship, now what you are doing in this exchange is exchanging energies from a particular energy field. And if you can find out which energy field you are exchanging, which energy field you are pulling from, which leads to the arguments, the dissatisfaction, the unhappiness, the constant bickering back and forth, which is really you pulling on the other's energy centers. That's all it is. That which you lack is which you seek, and that which you lack is which you will pull upon, so that you can feel that energy center. And why would you do that? Because when you are lacking energy, life force, prana, chi, from that part of your body, you feel alive. And in the moments that you feel alive, nothing's missing. Momentarily, you feel whole. That's what everyone is doing. They're trying to find wholesome. They're trying to find whole, the entirety of who they are, of who you are. And as that partner, and in this example, in the romantic relationship, as you find that person that feels that life force, that gives you that life force, you feel on top of the world. The honeymoon period. And if you can continue with this exchange for a longer period of time, then that honeymoon period lasts a bit longer. But then eventually, a part of you then begins to realize, and you might not know it in this concept, in this way of the exchange, but then the disruptions begin. And they only begin because both of your bodies realize that there is a pulling and that you are feeling drained. You start becoming tired and exhausted. And this tired and exhaustedness leads to the arguments. It leads to the blowouts, the silent treatments, and to the hiding, where you need space but you can't quite communicate what you need because you don't know what is happening. Everything was so bright, it was so alive, the exchange was so even, it was so fair, you both felt so alive. What's happened? Well, what's happened is that the reality that you haven't filled that part of you yourself. And that is a very difficult reality to face, because when you have not filled that life force yourself with your own energy, then that will start unfolding in your romantic relationships. And like we said, it starts unfolding as the disruptions. And then you leave. You cut the cord and you go and search for another, not knowing that when you find another, that the same cycle will repeat itself until you understand the message of coming back home first and foremost, and of filling that place within your body with your own life and consciousness. Once you've done that, then what you attract will be very different. And as you look at the friendships and the partnerships in your working lives, the energy works on a very similar level, but it's less intimate because you don't share a bed with these individuals. The energies are less entangled. There is more space. And when there is more space, there is more centeredness. There is more rooting in your being as you make these energetic exchanges, which means there is a bit more composure within you. But in the romantic relationships, as you share the bed, you are sharing your entire energy field. That is why you must be mindful of who you share your personal space with. Because as soon as you start sharing your energy field with another, especially those that you don't quite trust at a heart level, you might be inviting them into your space, but that doesn't mean you trust them at a heart level and you feel safe with them. You must understand what kind of exchange that you're going into to avoid entanglements that can take years to clear. Yes, oh yes, and this can be a very exhausting loop. And now in your friendships, understand why these last a lot longer than, say, romantic relationships, which can be quite fleeting for many of you, and your partnerships in your field of work. And remember that one message. Space. Space creates clarity. Space creates room for the vibrations to settle. And when you're in a romantic relationship, there's more manual labor that takes place after the initial honeymoon period. Because there is much to settle, there is much to understand, and there is much patience to be learned. Two completely different spirits with their own baggage, absorption of experiences, many or multi-dimensional realities and lens of which they have learned and programmed themselves and have been programmed by and of, not to mention the karma in which the two individuals carry and the lives that they have lived beyond this life that they have met you. You can see, and we haven't even spoken about the individual's family, nor have we spoken about that individual's upbringing. So if we just begin with that, if you can just hold that as you meet another, meeting the entire collection of what they have brought forth in the moment as they meet you and as you meet them. If you can just bring that into your conscious awareness in the moment, you see it's very beautiful, and it only gets messy when you move away from the core and the purity of their being. When you move away from that, when you start nitpicking, start focusing on all the negative aspects of this individual, you create the essence of losing their pure state of consciousness. And as you look out with that lens, not them, you dim their lights. And they may be able to hold the light, hold their own light for a certain period of time. But depending on what you see and what you've allowed yourself to see, then your own perception can start weighing heavy on another. That's why it's so important to see the individual as a collection of all that they are, all that they've been and been a part of, because essentially that is a reflection of you. And if you can see that, you will swim with them in the tranquility of the clear waters, the tranquility of your presence, without allowing all that isn't in the moment to disrupt. Because you will always meet another where you are. And that's why it's so important as you move through your journey to continue seeing yourself as a pure state of consciousness. Because in this pure state of consciousness, all that isn't yours will unravel by itself. And if you can hold this state, you will see it very clearly in another. And we thank you for being here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.